We all have situations, experiences, and moments in our life when we know deep at our core we have to do something different. We have to pivot. And regardless of how big or small that pivot is, it requires us to change something in our life. And that change can feel really uncomfortable. However, it is that change that is creating something entirely new. And it is that newness that creates a very different way of life in one area or multiple areas of our life. What's this all about? It is all about reinventing thyself. My name is Michelle Shutter, and I'd like to welcome you to Reinventing Thyself. I am so glad that you joined me today because it is here that we'll move beyond our old self, our old identity, and that trailer of garbage from the past that we like to pull into the future, but really need to ditch that hitch. It is here that we'll move into that place of reinvention and embracing the newness of it all. Are you ready to step into reinventing thyself? Because guess what? It is never too late, and your time is now. Let's get started. Welcome to this episode of Reinventing Thyself. My name is Michelle Shutter, and I'm super excited that you are here today because the title of this episode is How Long Are You Willing to Wait? And I have a really beautiful, heart-touching story to share with you that will kind of kick off this episode. But first of all, if you are new to the podcast or to the video, welcome. I'm so excited that you're here because one of the things that I love to do is to not only inspire, but empower women to really embrace the newness of change, because change is the only thing that is constant in life. And when we can step into that change and really reinvent ourselves, no matter how big or how small, from a place of empowerment, of inspiration, it really allows us to step into what we were called to do and who we were called to become. And all of this begins to peel back layers that, gosh, it's really an enlightened journey when you can move out of the stress and the angst and the guilt and the what ifs when you are encountering a change. Now, let's face it, not all change is comfortable by any means, right? However, when we can just thoroughly embrace that newness on whatever level we are supposed to embrace it at, it really makes reinventing thyself so much easier. So welcome. And as always, I would love to hear what you're taking away from this episode. All the ways to contact me are in the description or in the show notes. Feel free to shoot me a message because, quite frankly, when you are digesting some of this and when you are having things that, like, I may say something that like triggers you or may encourage you to explore it a little bit more or really start to do a deep dive, sometimes just typing it out and hitting send is enough to really get things flowing for you. So again, let me know what lands with you with this episode. So today, I want to share this story with you and really look at that whole question of how long are you willing to wait? So this past weekend, I was volunteering in a concession stand with an older gentleman. We were volunteering at a baseball tournament. And he shared this just beautiful, heart-touching story that I wanted to share with you. So when he was in high school, he was at a church event and saw this girl and just like was immediately like, I need to know who she is. I want to get to know her. I'm gonna, drum up the courage to go introduce myself. And so he did, but he left that event then not even getting her name or a number or anything. And so like he was a little bit disappointed, a little bit devastated. Like, how am I going to get in contact with this woman again, or this girl again? And a couple weeks later, this girl had showed up at a service at his church. And when he saw her, he went afterwards and went to talk to her. And he's like, how did you know where to find me? And she's like, well, I listened very carefully because I knew you mentioned what church you went to. So that's how she ended up finding him. So they were just kind of like friends on and off, I believe. Well, just more like friends, not a relationship. And she became really good friends, like best friends with his sister. And it came to a point where he enlisted in the military, but he, in his heart, knew that when he came back from the military, he was going to ask her to marry him. Like he just had this conviction that, she was the one for him. And he went off to the military. After a year, was honorably discharged and came back home. Now, he came back home, but didn't have keys to his house or anything like that. So he went and knocked on the door. And when he knocked on the door, his sister was there, but also this girl was there with her husband. And so in the course of this year, this girl had went and gotten married, and this man I was working with, right, had no idea. And just, like how heartbreaking, right? How devastating to realize that the person that has filled my heart and with so much, I just love so deeply, but yet I couldn't express it to her earlier. She's now moved on in her life. And he, continued to share the story. They went on with their lives. He got married. And then it came to a point like later in life where her husband passed away. And her husband had passed away, and then his wife had passed away. And so he had just reached out to her saying, would love to go to dinner, no strings attached, nothing like that. And so she texted back and said, yeah, I'd love to do that. Now, that dinner didn't work out in their favor by any means. However, after a few weeks went by, she reached out to him again asking, do you want to do a redo? And after that, they had, a courtship, a relationship, and ended up getting married. And it was 51 years later. 51 years. And you could just feel it like pouring like out of his body, like just how that piece of waiting 51 years was so worth it. And that's what he said. I waited 51 years and it was worth it. And not to say that he didn't love his wife that had passed away and she didn't love her husband, nothing like that. But there was such a connection that he had to her that after all these years and everything they went through, 51 years later, after meeting her for the first time, they ended up getting married. And again, it just like, it touched my heart because obviously he knew, in his gut, just that inner knowing that, she was supposed to be in his life in some capacity, but never expecting that she would be married when he came back from the military. And so just think about like the roller coaster of emotions that this man went through. But I bring this up and I share this today because when we are starting something new, there's so much going on and so much noise sometimes that we lose our patience. And we want microwave results and we want it yesterday, right? So if we are looking to transition to a new career, if we're looking to start a business, if we're looking to transform our bodies in some way and look at improving our lifestyles so that we become healthier, one of the biggest challenges that we go through is patience. How do we exercise patience? And for this man, it was 51 years. Now, again, over the course, there were things that happened in his life, but you understand what I'm saying here, that he waited essentially 51 years to have this woman in his life on a consistent basis. And so I ask you to think about how much time are you willing to wait to get the results that you want, to grab the achievements or the success that you're looking for? How long are you willing to wait? And within that time, how committed are you to doing what it takes to get to where you want to go? What actions are you willing to take? And we can use like that, changing up your lifestyle, like health. It's just an easy one to use, right? Because are you willing to do some of the hard stuff to get what you want? Are you willing to do what other people won't so you can have what other people can't? And again, it goes back to, we perceive this as a sacrifice in terms of, oh, I got to give up my alcohol. Oh, I got to give up sugar. Oh, I got to give up this. And so we're always focusing on lack rather than the abundance of, oh my gosh, I'm going to have so much energy. Oh my gosh, I'm going to be able to work out on a regular basis. Oh my gosh, I'm going to feel vibrant. I'm going to feel radiant. And it's almost like we're going into that place of our cup half empty initially, which is a lack, versus half full. And so we need to really get honest with ourselves and really take a deep dive into why do I go down that road? Why do I go down that road of sacrifice, of suffering? Is this a pattern that is continually showing up in my life? Where has it repeated itself other times? And health is an easy one because we can look back over time and be like, oh yeah, there I was, up and down and up and down and up and down. Why didn't I stay consistent? And many times we need to do more inner work in terms of our emotional health, our mental health, our worthiness health. We need to take all of that into consideration when we are choosing to do something different in our life. Because all of this is reinventing thyself. It's coming from a place of knowing that we have to make a change, because that comes from our heart. But when we get wrapped up in the timeline of it, and I want this yesterday, I want microwave results. How come I'm not getting this? Why am I, and this person has these results and I'm doing the same thing and I'm not getting it. Right? That whole comparison piece comes into play. We really need to hit that pause button and start to do some of that inner work. And when we use health, we can look at, where are some of these emotions stuck in our body that we have overlooked and we've not processed through. And now it doesn't want to release because we haven't looked at the inner work of it. Some people call it shadow work, because some of it is, it's almost like we've taken situations, incidents, experiences that didn't feel good to us, and we have stuffed them in a box and put them in the closet, and we have stuffed that closet full. And we've done everything we can to really hide it at the back of the closet. And yet we're afraid to open that closet door, because if we do open that closet door, everything will come tumbling down. And yet what is left is that box that we really deserve to open and go through the work of releasing it. Now, that work doesn't happen overnight. So I go back to my original question of how long are you willing to wait? How long are you willing to do the work that it takes to get to where you want to go? And again, it's not always easy, but it's so much better when we surround ourselves with support. We have people that can really look at things through a different lens, perhaps not the lens that we are looking at things through. And so what I want you to think about today is just that. What is one thing that you've been looking to achieve? One thing that you've been looking to do differently? One thing that would really just fill your heart if it came to fruition? And then you have to ask yourself honestly, how long am I willing to wait for it? And after you come to that answer, it's what am I willing to do to get what I want? And those two questions may be enough to spark something different within you that is willing to perhaps take a risk, is willing to move through that fear, is that action that is filled with courage to just take that first step and know that, gosh, that wasn't as bad as what my ego mind had said it was. And so I want to leave you with that today. That story and some of those questions that I asked throughout this episode. And honestly, take a piece of paper out and write some of this out. Get it out of your head. Allow for whatever message is coming through you onto that paper. Just write it. Just let it be. Because sometimes we even surprise ourselves as to what flows through that pen onto the paper. And don't forget, if you're looking for some shortcuts to reinventing yourself, make sure you head on over to www.reinventingthyself.com. You can download that PDF, and within that PDF, you can book a free 20-minute Reinventing Thyself call, a reinventing call that perhaps will set you up in a new way that, again, you can't see because you're looking through that same lens. So with that, I encourage you to embrace the newness of change, to lean into the pivot, because whatever is showing up in your life is showing up because it's meant to be here. It is meant for you to step into that place, to move into that direction of really becoming you in a whole new way. Until next time, have a great day.
Well, what are you waiting for? Whether you've pivoted and are unsure, or you're on the verge of pivoting, there is no better time than now for you to begin. Want to know why? Because if it wasn't the right time, the pivot wouldn't have shown up. And to get you started, I have got 3 shortcuts to reinventing thyself. Just head on over to www.reinventingthyself.com and you can download it there. And don't forget to message me with the shortcut that resonates with you the most. One last thing, I know you and I are not the only ones that have leaned into the pivot. Be sure to share this with others so they can be supported too. And from the bottom of my heart, thank you for supporting me and sharing this message. Until next time.